Let's face it, fitness information is everywhere. It's overwhelming. Trying to figure out the best way to build muscle, it can feel impossible sometimes.
It really can.
Well, consider this your shortcut. Today, we're diving deep into one specific strategy, volume cycling.
Exactly. We're focusing on the volume cycling for hypertrophy,
Yeah.
muscle growth. Our main source today is a fantastic presentation, volumcyclingjournalclub.pdf.
Right.
It's by Dr. Michael Zourdos from the MNSS Research Review, Volume 9, Issue 5. He really breaks down the latest research and, importantly, how it applies practically.
Okay, so let's start simple. What is volume cycling, basically, according to the source?
So in a nutshell, it's about strategically changing up your training volume for specific muscle groups. You rotate between periods of, say, high volume and then lower volume.
So not just hitting everything hard all the time.
Definitely not. The example they give is maybe doing 25 sets for shoulders for one block, like a few weeks. Then in the next block, you might drop shoulders down to maybe 10 or 15 sets. And during that time, maybe you ramp up the volume for your legs or your back instead.
Got it. So it's a planned rotation, a smarter way to manage workload across different muscles.
Precisely.
So our mission today is clear. Figure out what volume cycling is, why it might work, look at the evidence, and see how you listening might actually apply it.
Exactly. And the whole idea, the reason we're even talking about this, stems from research showing that, well, higher training volumes can often lead to more muscle growth.
Ah, okay, so that's the starting point. And our source points to some specific studies that really kick this off.
Yeah, they mentioned a few key ones that provided the impetus for the theory. Studies by Schoenfeld et al.
Yeah.
In 2019, Brigado et al. In 2022, Ines et al. In 2024, and Pelland et al. Just this year, 2025.
And the big takeaway from those was?
The headline finding was that really high volumes, maybe higher than you'd expect, might actually be beneficial for hypertrophy.
Might be. But, and this seems like a crucial, but how practical is that? Can you actually sustain, like, super high volume for every muscle week after week?
That's exactly the problem the source brings up. It's likely unsustainable for most people for all muscle groups at once. The recovery demands alone would be massive.
Right. Sounds like a recipe for burnout or worse.
Totally. And that's where volume cycling comes in as a potential solution.
Yeah.
It lets you tap into those high volume benefits for some muscles, but not everything simultaneously. It's the strategy born from that high volume research meeting real-world limitations.
Okay, makes sense. So we understand the why, the high volume potential. Now, what about the evidence specifically for cycling the volume? Do studies show that rotation itself works better?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the direct evidence for volume cycling as a specific strategy is still, well, developing. It's not as clear-cut yet.
Okay.
But we can look at studies that give us some strong hints, like that Brigado study from 2019 you mentioned earlier.
Right, they compared different set levels, 16, 24, 32 sets a week.
Exactly, over 8 weeks. And they found some indication that the 32-set group had greater muscle growth than the 16 or 24-set groups.
Some indication, so not definitive.
Well, the difference was only statistically significant for triceps growth, comparing the 32-set group to the 16-set group.
Ah, okay, just the triceps.
Yeah, but the trend across the board suggested higher volume could be better. It sort of sets the stage, you know.
Gotcha. And Schoenfeld's 2019 study, that one looked at even higher volumes, right?
It did. It suggested a possible extra benefit for muscle growth with volumes around 30 to 45 sets per muscle per week compared to lower volumes. Again, acknowledging there's probably an upper limit somewhere.
Okay, possible benefit. Now, that Carvalho study from 2021 seems really relevant. It looked at something kind of like cycling.
Yes, this one's quite interesting. They had two groups. Both started similarly. Then one group did a strength block lower reps, heavy weight for a few weeks, followed by a hypertrophy block. The other groups just did hypertrophy training for that whole time.
Okay, and what happened?
Well, by the very end, overall gains were pretty similar between the groups. But, and this is the key part, the group that did the strength, then hypertrophy, they tended to show faster muscle growth during weeks 4 to 8, right when they switched to that higher volume hypertrophy block.
Ah, so that change, that big jump in volume after doing something different seemed to spark more growth in that specific period.
That's the interpretation from our source, yeah.
Yeah.
They highlighted the huge increase in training volume for that group when they switched. It also makes you wonder, maybe the group doing hypertrophy the whole time, maybe 11 weeks straight of high volume, was just too long. Perhaps they had diminishing returns.
Interesting. That constancy might not be optimal. What about Inns et al., 2024, they pushed volumes really high, didn't they?
They did. They had groups progressively increase leg volume up to 22, then 42, and even 52 sets per week.
52 sets. Wow. And
Well, statistically, the differences between the groups weren't always significant, but there was a very clear trend. Muscle growth seemed to scale up with the volume.
the source gave actual numbers, right? Like percentage increases.
Yep. For the quad muscle, the vastus lateralis cross-sectional area, the 22-set group averaged about a 4% increase. The 42-set group was almost 10%, and the 52-set group was just over 11%.
So even without hitting statistical significance everywhere, that pattern is hard to ignore.
It really is. And you see something similar, though less dramatic, in a 2024 calf study by Cassiano et al. Calf growth also tended to track with volume across 6, 9, and 12 weekly sets.
Okay, so pulling it together, the most direct evidence that looks like volume cycling is maybe that Carvalho study with the big volume jump, even if it wasn't designed as a cycling study per se.
That seems fair. The evidence explicitly testing deliberate planned cycling is still emerging. But these studies, plus the high-volume trend, strongly suggest that varying the stimulus which cycling does is likely beneficial. The body seems to like change.
Right, avoids adaptation plateaus, maybe.
Could be. And that leads nicely into the indirect evidence. Are there other reasons, maybe biological ones, why cycling might work?
Good question. What does the source say?
Well, it points to research suggesting that our muscle-building machinery, specifically pathways like mTOR, might get a bit jaded, let's say.
Jaded? How so?
The idea, citing a 2022 study by Jocko et al., is that these anabolic pathways might have lower activation if you just keep hitting them with the same training dose over and over. Cycling the volume changes that dose, potentially keeping the pathways more responsive.
Okay, that makes biological sense. Avoids the body getting too accustomed to the routine. What else? There was that Osaguara study from 2013.
Yes, that was really compelling. They compared two groups over 24 weeks. One group trained straight through.
Okay.
The other group did 4 blocks of 6 weeks of training, but each block was separated by a 3-week break, like a detraining period.
Right, and the results?
Overall, muscle growth at the end of 24 weeks was actually similar between the two groups.
Similar, even with 9 weeks of breaks in the cycled group. That's wild.
But here's the fascinating part. In the cycled group, muscle growth was significantly accelerated during each of those 6-week training blocks after the break.
Ooh.
Meanwhile, the group training continuously saw good growth early on in the first 6 weeks, but then it really slowed down, kind of plateaued.
So those breaks, or periods of lower demand, seem to almost reset the muscles, priming them for better growth when training ramped up again.
That's exactly the implication. It's strong indirect support for the concept of cycling periods of higher stimulus with periods of lower stimulus or rest. It suggests you might get more bang for your buck during the on periods.
Wow, okay. So even if the direct volume cycling studies are still coming, there's a solid biological rationale and some pretty suggestive long-term study data.
Precisely. The pieces are definitely there.
All right, this is great background. Let's shift to the practical side. If someone's listening and thinking, okay, maybe I should try this, what are the key things they need to consider?
First off, and this is crucial, those set numbers from the study's 32, 45 sets, they're not magic numbers for everyone. Volume needs to be individualized.
Makes sense. Based on experience, recovery, life stress.
All of that. What worked in a controlled study might be way too much, or maybe even not enough, for you specifically.
And we should also remember the context of those studies, right? Like how they trained.
Absolutely. Our source reminds us, think about the details. Brigato's study used 4 days a week, hitting muscles twice, reps 8-10 failure, only 1 minute rest.
Pretty intense.
Yeah. Schoenfeld used a 3-day full body, 8-12 reps to failure, but with longer rest, 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Carvalho was 4 sets of 8-12 to failure, 1 minute rest. The way they accumulated volume matters, not just the total number of sets.
Okay, another big question the source raises. How long can you actually keep up really high volume training?
That's a huge consideration. It's probably not something you can or should maintain indefinitely. There's fatigue, potential for overreaching or injury. It takes a toll.
Which brings us to downstream changes. What does that mean?
It means that if you crank up one variable, like volume, dramatically, other things probably need to adjust too. It has knock-on effects.
Okay, like what kind of adjustments?
Well, high volume takes time and energy. So maybe you need longer rest periods between sets, at least initially. Maybe you need more efficient strategies like supersets to get the work done without spending hours in the gym.
Right.
Exercise selection might change. Maybe you start with big compound lifts but shift slightly as fatigue builds. Even how close you train to failure, your RIR or RPE, might need adjusting to manage recovery.
So it's a whole system. You change the volume, you have to tweak the system around it.
Exactly. You have to manage the overall cost to your body, as the source puts it.
Now, how should someone actually increase volume when they cycle up to jump straight to 40 sets?
Definitely not. The source advises against huge jumps too quickly. While some might talk about 20–50% increases per week, that can be really tough.
So gradual progression.
Yes, work up to it. Your peak volume in a high-volume block shouldn't be week 1. You need to let your body adapt. Start lower, build up over the block.
And how do we even count volume? Is it just total sets?
That's another good point. There are different ways: total volume, relative volume. But the source highlights sets per week, especially what they call fractional sets per week.
Fractional.
Yeah, basically counting the sets that directly target the muscle you're focused on. It's considered a good fit in recent research. And thinking about it this way can make those higher weekly set targets seem a bit less daunting, maybe.
Okay, interesting. So focus on the direct hits. Let's make this even more concrete. Can you walk through an example from the source, going from a base template to a volume cycling block?
Sure. The example involves picking some muscle groups to prioritize, let's say legs, back, and bicep.
Okay.
In the first cycling block, you might increase the weekly sets for those groups by, say, 20 to 50%. But, and this is key, you'd keep the volume for other groups like chest, shoulders, triceps at more of a maintenance level.
Right, so you're not trying to blast everything at once, focus the attack.
Exactly. A
Yeah.
planned imbalance, essentially. You push some, maintain others. The source then gives a more detailed example, like focusing on lower body for a 5-week high-volume block.
And within that 5-week block, how does the volume change?
It progresses. You wouldn't start at the peak volume. You'd gradually increase the sets each week or maybe every couple of weeks.
To let the body adapt.
Right. To elicit the response, protect against excessive damage, and allow for that acclimation. The rate of increase might slow down as you get towards the end of the block, hitting your peak volume somewhere in the later weeks, not week 1.
Makes sense. What about applying this to a common split, like upper-lower?
Good example. You could have an upper body high volume block, so you'd increase sets for chest, back, shoulders, arms.
While keeping lower body at maintenance?
Yep. Or maybe slightly reduced. And during that upper body focus, you'd implement those downstream changes we talked about.
Like what specifically for an upper body block?
The source suggests things like using supersets to save time. Maybe starting the block training a bit further from failure, like using a higher RIR to help manage recovery initially.
Okay.
You could then potentially progress to training closer to failure later in the block. And smart exercise choices. Maybe swapping barbell bench for dumbbell press on one day, or using cables instead of free weights for certain flies, just to manage fatigue or vary the stimulus slightly.
It really hammers home that point. Change one thing, like volume, and you'd likely need to adjust other dials too.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's all interconnected. Manage the overall stress.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. Let's try and boil it down. What are the absolute key takeaways for someone listening?
All right, the source sums it up nicely. First, indirect evidence strongly suggests long-term volume cycling is a sensible strategy.
Okay.
Second, when cycling up, increases of around 20–40% in set numbers per muscle group seem like a reasonable target for that high-volume phase.
20–40%. Got it.
Third, remember that a 20% increase might sound like a lot, but when you break it down per session, it might not be a huge jump in actual sets.
Good perspective. Keeps it manageable.
Fourth, and really vital, keep some muscle groups at maintenance volume while you push others. Don't try to increase everything at once.
Right. The core principle.
And fifth, make those necessary downstream changes, adjust rest, exercise selection, maybe RIR to accommodate the higher volume and aid recovery.
Perfect summary. And there were some additional thoughts too.
Yeah, just reinforcing that volume cycling makes logical sense, even if direct proofs is still building. It's basically periodization for hypertrophy.
A specific kind of periodization.
Exactly. Also, build up to high volumes appropriately. Don't jump in too fast. Consider using a deload after a tough high-volume block.
Good reminder about deloads.
And finally, even if you're focused on strength too, you can still likely use volume cycling. Maybe do your heavy strength work first, then have the higher volume work for your target muscles.
So it's adaptable, not just for pure hypertrophy folks.
Definitely adaptable. It's about strategically managing volume over time to hopefully get better results without burning out.
Fantastic. And just to reiterate, While these examples and numbers are helpful guides, everyone needs to figure out what works for them, right?
Absolutely. Individualization is paramount.
Mm.
Listen to your body, track your progress, adjust as needed. This deep dive gives you the framework and the science, but you're the one driving the car.
It's definitely a more nuanced approach than just lift more. It's about lifting smarter over the long haul.
That's the goal. Sustainable progress.
So, a final thought for everyone listening. Take a moment to consider your own training. How do you currently spread your volume across muscles and across time? Could introducing some form of cycling, even a simple rotation of focus, potentially help you bust through a plateau or just manage your training fatigue better? Something to mull over.